former Member of Parliament for Nyeri Town constituency, the Honorable NGUNJIRI WAMBUGU. He's here today because we want to talk about tigers, or unity of all animals and humans.
Animal Farm?
And Mount Kenya, yes. You know, it's all about all things. It's hyenas, leopards, cheetahs, tigers, Chodaneti.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mheshimiwa, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Welcome to Kenya's Big. It's good to have you again on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Now, something has been happening. A national conversation has been taking place lately. Started somewhere and then has gone into the deputy president, and the deputy president says, you know what, as Mount Kenya, we need to speak with one voice. And in fact, I'm going to reach out to Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president. He is still a son of the mountain and a leader of this region, and we're going to have a conversation. Let's bring all leaders together and the entire community together. We speak in one voice. Mm-hmm. And among the people who have taken up that voice is NGUNJIRI WAMBUGU, and says, yeah, by the way, we need to speak in one voice. What is this speaking in one voice, NGUNJIRI?
Actually, I have not just taken up the voice. It's been a consistent position. Once you understand how Kenyan politics is done, and how Kenyan politics is operationalized, and how mobilization for Kenyan politics is done, there is really no alternative than that particular position. But let me first start with a preamble. Every time Mount Kenya has this conversation about uniting, there seems to be, I don't know what negative vibe goes out, specifically when it's Mount Kenya who says it. But when Northeastern, for example, they actually have a very serious and very structured pastoralist coalition that brings together all the political leadership from that particular region. Western Bloc, for example, have unity calls all the time. I mean, they hold rallies. When Musalia and Wetangula were on different sides of the political divide, there were elders, including Akina Atwoli, demanding that they sit together and come up with a unified position for their region, Coast region, Nyanza province. So for some reason, we've never really understood why it becomes a problem when Mount Kenya says, guys, we need to actually go behind the tent as a region and think. The fact that the deputy president has now, part of the reason this has become an interesting conversation is because he said he's going to reach out to the former president based on the history that they have had. But then that is the power of regional interests. At a certain point, your personal interests must be subsumed by regional interest. The deputy president and the former president had a very acrimonious relationship for a couple of years towards the last election. And of course, there's always people who take different sides of that blame. The people who will say it was Rigathi Gachagua's fault because he was attacking the president. Rigathi Gachagua will say it was Uhuru's fault, or people who support Rigathi will say it was Uhuru's fault because he had deviated from the arguments that we had or towards the direction we were supposed to take. But that's all now been overtaken by the fact that we have Rigathi Gachagua as the senior most political leader of the region, and Uhuru Kenyatta as a retired president from the region. And if you're going to have a unified conversation, these two leaders must come together. Actually, I said this early this year, and it was one of the times when I was suggesting that it's about time for us to put elections behind us. We had a very acrimonious relationship within our community, within the region, towards the 2022 elections. But give it to him. When the deputy president says he managed to mobilize 87% of the people who voted from the Mount Kenya region to vote for his preferred candidate, it's a fact. And that's a fact that we have to recognize. And when you come from that region and you're a Democrat, you have to accept that the region had a choice between to go with Martha Karua, which is where Uhuru Kenyatta preferred we go, or Rigathi Gachagua. And the region chose to go with Rigathi Gachagua.
So the region spoke with one voice.
The region, 87% of the region spoke with that voice.
Does one voice mean 100%?
Not
or
necessarily.
Does one voice mean a majority?
One voice means a majority.
Okay.
But then also that there's no limit to that majority.
Would you say 87% is sufficient majority? I mean,
actually,
it's a super majority.
87% is a super majority.
So the
but that doesn't mean you can't get the 13% who didn't speak with that voice and listen and find out, by the way, why didn't you guys come to our side? That part of that 13% includes people like NGUNJIRI, WAMBUGU, who are not part of the 87% at that time. And you most probably want to find out, okay, are you guys, Uhuru Kenyatta is also part of the 13% that did not vote. So when Rigathi says, I'm going to reach out to Uhuru Kenyatta, I suspect he's also saying he's going to reach out to NGUNJIRI, he's going to reach out to this 13% at 11,000 people in Nyeri town who did not vote for UDA. And they come from that particular constituency by itself. So they are part of the people he's most probably trying to reach out to.
Why must the region speak with one voice? Is that not curtailing the whole idea of democracy, of openness of ideas, of encouraging and accepting divergent opinions and views? Why must we speak with one voice? And who's deciding which voice? Actually,
this is the most democratic way you can go. Let's start from the country, coming down once, because it's important for us to be honest when we analyze that particular call. As Kenyans, we say we want to speak with one voice. As Kenyans, on issues. When you want to talk about taxes, you want to talk about the finance bill, you want to talk about various things. There's a call, can we have one voice? Can we have one position on this issue as Kenyans? So I don't see why asking people from a particular region that is part of that country and asking them to have one common position on an issue is undemocratic. Because part of it is also encouraging everybody to come, bring your position, and let's take the one that wins. That then becomes a common position. Remember, it's a marketplace of ideas. This doesn't mean that NGUNJIRI cannot come with his idea. Rigathi comes with his, Uhuru comes with his, somebody else comes with his. Then when we go to the place where we are going to sit as a region, and I push my agenda and you push yours, and I argue my point and you argue yours, we assume that the region is intelligent enough to pick the best idea of the five, or even combine several of those ideas into one idea that then you present to the rest of the country. And you say, you know what, as a region, these are the issues that are important to us. We are a generally agricultural community, we do business, we would like this kind of enabling environment created for us as a region. And then Western does the same thing. And this is a point I want to emphasize. The fact that Mount Kenya is coming together to speak with one voice doesn't mean other regions cannot do the same. In fact, it makes it easier, ultimately, to have a common position. Because you have a common position for Mount Kenya, Western has a common position, Coast has a common position, and then those ideas again come to a marketplace at a national level, and ultimately you agree what being Kenyan is actually all about.
You know, this conversation is being had as though what you're saying has not existed before. Has that not been the very definition of our politics?
Yes, it has.
Yes. So what exactly are we saying is new now? Because in all honesty, even with the fragmentation and the differences that you speak of, they've been manifested even as we've gone about our business of politics. Because you will find there is no region in this country that doesn't have representation of more than one party. There's none. In fact, one could argue that Central Kenya has been one of the most accommodating regions when it comes to the divergence of political parties.
True.
Yes.
True.
But again, that doesn't mean you cannot speak in one voice.
Yes. Actually, you're making my point.
I know I am making your point.
Thank you very much.
And I'm asking, you see, let's go back to what I asked before.
Yes.
This discussion is taking place against a backdrop of something that has been our lived experience. But now, if I look at the discussion, it's like it's something new, and I'm saying it is not something new. No, it's not at all. It actually hasn't been.
NGUNJIRI, why is it important to have a group of people united by ethnicity to coalesce around a certain idea? Why is it important to do that and put that against the backdrop of national unity? Why is it important to have one group of people, because they were from the same place, be of one voice?
First, it assumes, and I say this very loosely, it assumes that that particular ethnicity has common interests, right? And again, I'm going to keep trying to throw this outside Mount Kenya so that we put it in context. When the president, for example, visits Western Province, the leadership of Western Province comes together and says, we want you to write off our sugar debt. Right? Now, the leadership that said that don't necessarily come from the same political party, but they come from the same region. And what we have done, and that's why my first statement when I started speaking about this was, we must first accept and understand how we mobilize politically as a country. And that is how you then understand why Musalia Mudavadi is a prime cabinet secretary in the Kenya Kwanza government. Because you would need to be able to make the Western Bloc, actually the Luhya specifically, feel that they're part of this government. Because if you don't do that, then you are going to have a very large chunk of our country feeling like this is not the government. The reason Eliud Owalo is a cabinet secretary in Kenya Kwanza, despite the fact that Kenya Kwanza did not get a noticeable vote block in Nyanza, is because there you must make when a Luo sits in Kenya and looks at the television and sees the cabinet secretaries representing cabinet, he must see a Luo. If he doesn't see a Luo, he doesn't feel represented. And that is the reality of our politics. Now, so once you start from that point, then you now come to the next level. When the president goes to Nyanza,
I really have to add something here. It just can't be any Luo. Yes, I'm repeating this. It can't be. There will be Luos who, even if you make them cabinet minister,
yes,
nobody in Luoland feels that they're represented.
Now you see, that's an internal conversation.
No, I needed to set that right. So
yes.
Yes.
Now you see why that is an internal conversation, because this is a twofold. It's a twofold presentation that is being done by the government. Twofold in this matter. When you form that cabinet, the Luos might think that Eliud does not represent them, but the rest of the country has seen a Luo. And the rest of the country doesn't necessarily understand the internal dynamics of the Luo community. That's it. That is why this conversation about Mount Kenya unity is interesting, because the non-Mount Kenya people don't understand the dynamics of the Mount Kenya community, and they want to understand, okay, we live with you guys in this country. What's going on? Why are you operating as if you're the only guys in this country? No, like, no. That's not what we're doing. We are just doing our own.
You're doing your own housekeeping.
We're doing our own housekeeping. And our housekeeping is because we've come from a very untidy political moment 14 months ago that left our regional leader at that moment and the incoming, the outgoing and incoming
completely at loggerheads.
At loggerheads.
So if
and for the sake of this community, we need to get these two
they have to handle
forces working together, because for as long as they're working against each other, it's a community that is suffering.
So to have those conversations then is important, because the best interests of the community then are what are held up here.
Yes.
And making sure that everybody's speaking one voice. So then it would be a very far-fetched idea to say that the community would coalesce around an idea and then for them pick a leader outside of the community. So it's not possible to have somebody outside of the community as the person that has been earmarked or identified as someone that they would want to choose.
No.
Okay.
And it's the simple reality of that is based on, for you to, in the last election, both sides of the political divide ended up having a running mate from the Mount Kenya region. And the argument at that moment was, this region is one of the most politically aware regions we have in the country, and it's not running a presidential candidate.
So I go back to my question.
Yes.
How does this play vis-a-vis the idea of national unity?
It plays into the idea of national unity if worked in a way that doesn't seem as if you're removing yourselves from the rest of the country. And that's that's the thing I'm trying to emphasize here. The issue of Mount Kenya, the Mount Kenya region coming together is not to withdraw themselves from the rest of the country. It is actually to create a paper, let me use that scholastic argument, that you can present to the rest of the country and say, look, we are part of this country. I'll keep going back to Western, because they did one of the most tidy ways of doing it when they did their paper on sugar. Right? They came to a president who doesn't necessarily come from the region and told him, look, we have had a sugar problem sugar thing for a long time. Okay, I noticed there was a small piece that said that now you can't talk about the Mambo ni Matatu. It's been
somebody's trying to
yeah, but that's where it came from. I mean, they took an argument to him, and he said, I'm going to sort this business. And just by that, he was able, because these are the leadership of the region, the assumption is the sugar issue is a very important issue to the entire region.
Okay.
Right?
Now, here's the thing, though. When we talk about Mount Kenya, who are we referring to?
We are generally referring to...
We are assuming that this is a homogeneous community.
Actually, we are politically, you see also, we also have to keep
politically,
being...
Yes,
we also have to keep being...
And who created this political entity called Mount Kenya?
Again, when we talk about Coast Region, we assume we're talking about the Taita Tavetas, Mijikenda,
the former you need to be clear. Tavetas are not Taitas. Tavetas are Tavetas.
Okay, Taitas.
Yes.
Now you see, that's how you keep getting... So when you talk about coast, you're assumed to be talking about the indigenous people from communities from the coast region.
From the former coast province.
While when you go to a place like Mombasa, you find that 40% of the population there is actually Luo. Right? But when you talk about the coast, you're talking about the indigenous communities, and Luos are not indigenous communities to the coast. But the assumption is when they came there, they were assimilated to the interests of that particular region.
Okay.
When you talk about Western, the assumption is that you're talking about the Luyas. Actually, you don't even talk about anybody else. But in Western, you find a lot of Kalenjins, you find a lot of Somalis. I was remembering CS Amina came from Western as her indigenous, as her home.
Actually, a justice of the Supreme Court came from Western.
There you are. And I'm sure they're not Luya.
He's not Luya at all.
There you are.
But
the assumption, politically, when you talk about Western, that you're talking about the Luya. When you talk about Nyanza, the assumption is you're talking about the Luo. And now the Kisis get upset about it because they're like, no, but we are also...
The Koreans get very upset.
And then if you go even further, you find the Suba.
The Suba are not sure.
They're like, we're even Bantus. We're not even Nilots. And you guys are putting us in one basket. So when you talk about Mount Kenya, you're talking about the Kikuyu, the Embu, the Meru, primarily. But Mount Kenya region there's a geographical Mount Kenya region, and then there's a political
Mount Kenya region.
So in this conversation, we're talking about the political
Mount Kenya region. When did this concept of the political Mount Kenya region begin?
The concept of Mount Kenya region has been with us, I think, from independence. Again, goes back to what I said. It's how we organize our politics. When Jomo Kenyatta was president, and he organized GEMA, and he made the Kikuyu Embu Meru Association a political outfit with Jenga Karumbe and the works, then Moi went and organized the Kalenjin, who actually did not exist. And he took the Tugen and the Nandi and the Kipsigis. That particular... No, what I mean, let me make it very clear. What I mean is that the Tugen, the Nandi, the Kipsigis were initially individual tribes.
You do know that there are Keyos, there are Pokots.
And Keyos and Pokots.
So,
you know, Pokots don't sometimes consider themselves part of...
Yes.
So a political community called the Kalenjin was also formed by Moi.
So we say Mount Kenya, is this a concept that was created sometime by some politicians who said, okay, so these communities of the Agikoyo, the Embu, the Meru, who are neighbors in this region called Mount Kenya, form one block.
Yes.
But they are not homogeneous.
No.
In fact, even among the Kikuyu, Kiambu, Muranga, Nyeri, Kirinyaga, and even parts of Nyandarua and Laikipia, don't necessarily have to speak the same language.
Same way when you go to Western, you find the Bukusu and the Maragoli. When you go to the Kalenjin, you find the Nandi and the Kipsigis.
They keep talking about you know, the Mulembe Nation and the importance of the Mulembe Nation speaking with one voice. They don't. Why must these people of Mount Kenya region speak with one voice?
Because
that's a question I
everybody else is organizing themselves the same way. So if you have the Mulembe Nation coming together and working very hard to form a Mulembe nation politically, then you have the Kalenjin forming a Kalenjin nation politically, and then you have Nyanza forming a Nyanza nation politically. Why would you ask the Mount Kenya region not to do the same thing?
But you know something, the question that Eric is asking is a very pertinent one.
Yes.
Because this unification you're saying is in Western Kenya. Where is it?
You see now,
that is what Atwoli has been trying to push for.
Yes. I mean, all these attempts are because it doesn't exist.
Actually, the attempts to keep bringing different communities together will not cease. In fact, ultimately, though now I've given up about this generation, I don't think it's going to happen in our generation. I always hoped that we would start from the community going up and actually be able to form a nation that we now come together and agree that yes, this is what I bring githeri to the table. You bring fish, you bring what?
Okay, pilau.
Pilau, and then somebody else brings chicken,
sweet potatoes,
and then we have a buffet, right? That's actually the assumption.
And
the advantage, yes, and we teremsha with musik, and we get a bit of camel soup.
But are you saying it doesn't happen?
You see, that is where we need to get.
But I think we're already there.
Socially.
Yes.
But you see, politically, we are not yet. And that's the whole idea. We are trying to work towards that.
Why must we be there?
Because we are a political nation.
For a balanced diet. Honorable NGUNJIRI, former MP for NGUNJIRI Town constituency, is our guest this morning. We are talking about this quest at having Mount Kenya unity and speaking with one voice politically. The Deputy President, NGUNJIRI himself, even the last time he was here, was saying, you know what, Jubilee, as we are doing all these things in Jubilee, can we also look at our people who are in UDA and what they're saying? Can we have one conversation? The Deputy President now says, yes, can we actually all speak with one voice, including that party? What's it called? MCC. Moses Kuria's party is called?
Ilienda.
So folded.
Alifunga.
They folded.
Before, UDA. What?
Yes.
Can we all come together, the various political groupings, and have one common agenda, one common paper? What shape do you see it taking?
Okay, the one thing you have to give the Mount Kenya region, I guess politically, we tend to be very calculative. And I say that with the example of what has happened in 2022 general elections. We had a president who was a regional leader and had been a regional leader actually for close to 20 years, sub to Kibaki, then prime. And at a transition, he tells us to go a certain direction. And the community actually refuses. And they're like, no, we're not going to go the direction you're telling us. We are going to go this one, this way. And it's not a usual thing. I mean, you could hear other people saying, "Yeni mnakataa kiongozi wenu yule anawaambia." So when you hear the calls for the community to sit down, I think what you are going to expect is that there are going to be a lot of surprising decisions. And one of them is when Gachagua wakes up and says, "I'm going to reach out to Uhuru Kenyatta," and everybody's like, what are you talking about? But the reality is that this is a community that on politics, at a certain point, is able to put emotions aside and decide this is the way we need to go. And I hear people saying that, but that is just the political leadership that is doing that. It's not the ordinary Wanjiku on the ground that is doing it, but it's actually the ordinary Wanjiku on the ground that is making the political leadership
them
do that. Because there's that perception of, we don't, actually you hear it all the time. Even if you just go to the village and someone tells you, we're not very happy. This fights between you guys are not making us happy. And it to be your mom, to be your neighbor, to be somebody at the market. Just a general conversation of, but you guys, why can't you sit down? If you all come from the same place and you all say you're representing us, why aren't you able to sit down and talk with one voice? Because we assume that, yes, you have personal differences, but those are your differences. When you go to the political field, you're not going on your personal issues, you're going on ours. And we have same issues. We want our coffee fixed, we want our tea fixed, we want our milk fixed, we want our small business environment created for us. Why can't you guys go and talk about that? And that pressure, by default, makes the leadership have to sit.
It's rising to the top.
It's building up.
Has the region moved on from Uhuru Kenyatta as being the political leader?
It has. And I say this on this basis. Even the people, actually what we are now having in the region is not a fight about whether Uhuru Kenyatta is a political leader or not. It's a fight about people who accept that he's not and people who haven't. Because even the people who don't accept that he is not the political leader will complain about Gachagua as not doing enough for the region. Oh, he's not fixing our coffee, he's not fixing our tea. But there's nobody who is going to tell you that if I have problems that I need solved, I'm going to go to Uhuru Kenyatta. Nobody is going to go and do that. At this moment in time, there's no constituency in terms of people groups that whether it is Nyamakima Group, for example, or the coffee farmers, or the tea farmers, or the milk farmers, and there's nobody who's going to wake up and say that we have a problem that we need solved, and we want to go to Uhuru Kenyatta. It's not going to happen.
So
that thing is done.
You're saying that the community has accepted Rigathi Gachagua as their political leader.
This is what is happening with Rigathi Gachagua. For you to accept a regional leader, there must be the one person who can summon anybody from the region and they come. Right?
Yes.
Right now, the only person who can do that is Rigathi Gachagua.
Because of his position
as a deputy president. He's the only person who can call all the religious leaders from the Mount Kenya region, tell them, I want us guys to have a meeting, and they will come. Who can call all the coffee farmers, all the tea farmers, or all the young people, or all the women leaders, or there has to be, that person who can do that, by default becomes the regional leader. Because there's nobody else, and this is the fact.
Can Uhuru not do that?
Uhuru could do it, but then the question a lot of people would be asking that you're calling us so that you do what for us? And that's why I talked about the calculativeness of our region. When you call, for example, let me use the Nyamakima region, Nyamakima business community, who are dealing with imports and stuff. If today Uhuru Kenyatta called them for a meeting, the first question they would ask him is, okay, so we have these problems. How can you help us? Because you have to call us based on the needs that we have. If you call the political leadership of the community today, Uhuru can do a mbuzi for us and we'll show up. But we'll show up because we respect him and what he has done for the community, not because of where he's going to take us. Because unfortunately, the taking us has now, he took us to where he could take us. And by default, he also accepted that his term is done. And I say this because not too many people remember that when Uhuru Kenyatta was introducing Martha Karua, he said, this is a lady I believe can take the community to the next level. So he was already at the point where
he was handing over.
I'm done. I've done my part. I've done the best I could for this community. And as I transition out, I would like to introduce you to Martha Karua, who again, very interestingly, wasn't a favorite of Uhuru's, if you remember. And neither was Martha very close to Uhuru.
Was Uhuru a favorite of Martha's?
Yes. But for the sake of where they were going, Uhuru thought, okay, the community, then we had Rigathi being pushed by the Kenya Kwanza side. The community made a decision and went with Rigathi. So Uhuru is actually transitioned out.
Sawa.
Even he did it for him.
In this particular case, even as the deputy president says he's going to reach out to Uhuru Kenyatta. Now let's look at the power play here.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
This is the former political supremo, and this is the incoming.
Yes.
Who will summon the other?
This is how I expect it would go. I expect that Rigathi Gachagua would send word to Uhuru Kenyatta, but I am, for the sake of how the community would go, I am more inclined to think Rigathi would go to where Uhuru is.
Meaning?
Not because, first, in recognition of the fact that you are still my senior. It's that thing of, I have been a general at war. I have led this community to war up to this point. I have retired. You are the new general.
You're the younger one.
When in most cases, they're general. It doesn't mean that your power has gone down, but you're the one on the field at the moment. In fact, you will find that a lot of the times, because Uhuru will be more of a mentor to Rigathi than a competitor.
Is that the case? Because we will not be looking at a situation whereby over the last 6 months, the very things he has said, and they are not private, they're very public, about Uhuru Kenyatta, has not been palatable. Okay, unpalatable at best in terms of the things that he said.
True.
So from the way optics just says that he would call out to him because he realizes, hold on a minute, I may have mucked up here a little bit and we actually still do need him. Not necessarily because of seniority or rank, but he realized, wait a minute, I may have said a thing or two that I shouldn't have said, and we still require him if we're going to do this very same thing that you're talking about.
Can I add to what you're saying? There are things I need done, and I need his help.
Yes, and I may have made a mistake with the things that I have said.
These things are not going to get done.
Yeah.
That's most probably part of the conversation. But then let's also use an example that we saw and we were all part of. Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga in the tribe called Kenya. right? This is Rigathi Gachagua and Uhuru in a tribe called Mount Kenya. But in the tribe called Kenya, in the bigger picture, we had an exact same scenario happen, where Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga had said some very unpalatable things about each other. In fact, if I remember, one of the things Uhuru kept saying is how much whiskey they took privately, just going through the unpalatable issues that they had dealt with. But they dealt with it. Now, because Rigathi doesn't imbibe, so I don't expect him to do the whiskey thing.
People can drink tea.
But I'm sure they can do soup.
Each can do their thing.
Yes.
Or each can do their thing. What I am sure about is that they will sit down and they will have a private conversation and a public conversation. The private conversation could be where, man, how could you tell me stuff like that? But then the public conversation is going to be like, okay, guys, we're moving together. Then let's also remember there's a history between these two gentlemen. Right? Rigathi Gachagua was taken to Uhuru Kenyatta by Moi as the guy who would teach Uhuru how government works, when Moi decided that he wanted to make Uhuru Kenyatta president. So they have a relationship of having worked together for over 10 years. So they have a history and worked together well.
Yeah.
Then politically, they had a fallout. I suspect they have more years of working together well than
They
the
have
years.
more in common.
They have more, yes, they have more in common than that divides. They have more years of being friends than being enemies. And then they are old people. I mean, they are older gentlemen. They are, for sure, they're not young, hot-blooded people. They're going to be able to sit around that table and sit down and agree.
Someone being a political ally doesn't make them your friend.
True.
Because that relationship is one of convenience, as are most alliances.
I guess they were friends. Then they did not become allies. And now they have to sit down and figure out how to become allies. Because the initial relationship was friendship.
But the salvos that have been fired have not been from Uhuru. Uhuru actually retired and kept quiet.
If you ask Rigathi Gachagua, he'll tell you, being arrested in the middle of the night.
Yes, in front of your family. Is a serious salvo.
Humiliated the manner.
That is a very serious salvo. And you see, there's so much that happened between the two gentlemen that I don't think many of us know. And the conversation that they're going to have, again, is just going to be between the two of them. And they're going to sort that issue out. But what I do know, and as I said, we are a very calculated community, both Rigathi Gachagua and Uhuru Kenyatta know that the community expects them to sort themselves out.
Let me ask this question. When we talk of community, every community has brokers, people who are known to be able to bring parties that don't see eye to eye together. So are we saying that the deputy president is the one who is spearheading this, or are they people within the community who are respected and listened to? Because it's not just these two individuals who are listened to. There are many others who are listened to, and who, when they say something, who can even summon this very Uhuru, and Uhuru will actually go and see them.
If you remember what Rigathi Gachagua said when he began this conversation, he said, I have been talked to. I have been visited by wazees, by religious leaders, by so and so, and they have told me they want the community to come together. So this is, and even as he says this, as people sit and say they're not sure. I mean, I've been hearing some voices say, no, Uhuru shouldn't agree, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, but it's not his choice. The minute you become a political leader of a community, you then have, it is going to happen. Even for people like myself who are former members of parliament, there are moments and you get called and you're told, boss, we want this to happen. Why? Because, see, we gave you the responsibility. At some point, we gave you the trust of leading us. Now, this is no longer about you. It is about us. That's going to happen to Uhuru Kenyatta, whether he likes it or not. It's happened. It's already happened to Rigathi Gachagua. I mean, I don't know why we are not asking ourselves how difficult it must have been a decision for Rigathi Gachagua to actually go in public and say, I'm going to reach out to Uhuru Kenyatta. I suspect it wasn't easy. But you can imagine the pressure that had come on him. People are assuming that pressure must be coming from outside. Oh, he's feeling like he's going to get isolated. He needs the warmth of the community. But I suspect that pressure is coming from inside.
Okay. Is that external pressure also playing a part? The feeling of political isolation, the fear, not feeling, the fear of political isolation for Rigathi Gachagua as an individual.
Yes.
And then for those who are around him, feeling that politically, you know, by the time we get to 2027, this game might change. So we need leverage by saying that we are speaking in one voice.
I don't even think Rigathi ever pretends about it. I think one of the, as he keeps saying, he's an honest man. One of the things he keeps saying, he's very clear in his head that, look, the reason we are in this government is because, actually, I think for Rigathi, he's very clear. The reason I am deputy president in this government is because I mobilized and I got 3 million votes from Mount Kenya region. Right? That's the reason I am deputy president in this government. The reason I will stay as deputy president in this government is to keep that vote intact behind William Ruto. The reason I might have a future in any other office is to keep this vote in my pocket, figuratively, and then start reaching out to other people. So I hear people saying, oh, but he needs to become a national leader. He needs to start talking to other people. The first thing he needs to do is consolidate
power.
Mount Kenya region behind him. Same thing is going to apply to Musalia Mudavadi. If Musalia Mudavadi is not able to convince Western Bloc to stand behind William Ruto, he will not be a prime cabinet secretary in the next government.
By the way,
this is all under the assumption that the people on the ground actually do want to coalesce against around Rigathi Gachagua.
Actually, it's the other way around. Rigathi Gachagua's primary responsibility is to find the issues that the people in the region want to coalesce around and become a champion to them. That's how it works. In politics, you don't go and ask people to follow you. You ask people to follow a cause that you're championing. So you have the responsibility of finding the cause. We didn't follow Uhuru Kenyatta for the sake of it.
Okay.
Uhuru went and found a cause.
How is that working out so far?
Actually, he's got a couple of things that are working for him, because first, he's been able to identify the things. When he also came up with his 3 things, those ones, whether you liked him or not. In fact, there's a friend of mine who...
John Kahawa,
Majani,
and milk.
given up.
He's told us
He hasn't given up.
Cartel.
No, he hasn't given up. He's just saying, man, this one is much harder than I thought.
Okay.
He's done the milk, he's doing the milk, and he's done the tea. Now, you see, there's a friend of mine, he's doing it. I mean, at least the tea. My dad is a tea farmer, and this year he's looking very happy. And the bonus this year is looking a lot better than the last.
Is it him who's doing it? I mean, the things
see now, the problem is, this is the reality of how government works. When it rains,
the government has brought the rain,
and we have a good harvest.
It's government.
So really, when all is said and done,
when there's drought, government.
When it's because when it's drought, it's a government. We are complaining that guys are dying of drought. What do we expect the government to do? So when it rains, why shouldn't we give credit to the government? If we are blaming them for the drought, I mean, if we are going to blame them for the drought, in reality, politically, if we are going to blame government for the drought. So what Rigathi has done, the point I was trying to make is, what he's done is identified the issues that are important to the region. And I was using a friend of mine who was very Azimionated, but he's a coffee farmer. And the minute Rigathi started talking about coffee, the guy was like, you know what, maybe there's hope for this guy. And that's it. That's how you get people to come behind you. You don't ask them to follow you for the sake of you. You ask them to follow you because you're in a position where you can actually champion and deliver for things that are important to you.
You know, I come from a region where I would argue our value system is slightly different. Because if you are to ask how it is Raila Odinga has remained at the helm of the Luo nation. So, this thing that you are speaking of,
at the issues that you call it around
this one which you're saying, which one is it exactly?
But you see, Raila has done the same thing, and he's been able to make the point to the community that the day I become president, I will solve all the issues that are important to you. I will mainstream fish as an economic conversation. I will make sure we stop being marginalized. So he's become the representation of the issues and the grievances of the Luo community.
The oppression.
And by the way, one of the worst things that could happen was for Raila to actually become president, because I suspect that he would actually disappoint the Luo community because he's not going to be able to do exactly what they expect him to do. But for as long as he's not, he's their champion, because he has not been proven as being unable to deliver on those promises.
You know where I'm going with this? Huh? Again, with the same Raila. I don't think it can be pleasant for you to be arrested in the middle of the night in front of your family. But what when you are detained for 8 years?
9.
By someone, 9, and you still end up chatting with this person and even being in the same government.
Yep.
See, we are discussing politics here.
Yes.
Not a church election, which in this country is really very political.
But
Actually, you know, it's
even worse.
Sometimes even worse.
Ask me. My dad is a retired clergy.
Yes. All I'm saying is, when you look at the realities of our politics, what Rigathi is doing is what he ought to do. Okay?
Yes.
Because even if he didn't want to, the moment you're deputy president, come from that region, people expect you to deliver certain things.
Yes.
but it isn't the delivery. Is he in the process of this delivery actually uniting the people? Because you're talking about the communists and speaking of one voice. Is he actually doing it?
Actually, he is. In fact, the most brilliant thing he did was reach out to Uhuru Kenyatta, because to the common, in Mount Kenya, at this moment in time, we have two camps. We have a camp
For
Uhuru, and then now we have a camp that not necessarily for Rigathi, it's for Kenya Kwanza, which Rigathi is becoming the champion of. Now, once you have championed the Kenya Kwanza camp and become that, because right now, anybody in Kenya Kwanza has to accept that Rigathi is a senior. The Uhuru people have been refusing. You people have been saying, no, Rigathi is not our senior. Sisi ni watu ya Uhuru. So now what Rigathi has done, by reaching out to Uhuru, the Uhuru people can't fight him anymore, because you are recognizing our guy is also a serious guy. Now, when the two of them meet, one of the things that is most probably going to happen, because you have to remember Uhuru is also a politician, right?
Yeah.
He is most probably he understands what Rigathi is doing. He might not like it, but he has to understand it. So one of the things he's most probably going to do is invest into the perception that, guys, okay, this is the guy, right? He just has to, because if he doesn't, then it's now going to start looking like him. In fact, what the deputy has done actually is put Uhuru in a very difficult position.
Really?
Because if Uhuru now refuses, because the deputy president has gone in public and said, in fact, with a lot of humility, I recognize a son of our soil, a son of our region, the former president who, first and foremost, have given instructions to all our people
to stop throwing
stones at him. And I will personally reach out to him and figure out how to work together.
What if Uhuru just comes and says, na nilikuwa nimewawarn?
Yes.
and says, you see, I told you guys, this is the wrong guy. Now he's trying to reach out to me. I told you, it will backfire on him very badly. Because unfortunately, it will backfire on
somebody else. This one?
No, it can't, because Rigathi is already the deputy president. This is no longer a competition. He is already deputy president, and he will be deputy president, God willing, for the next 4 years.
But Mheshimiwa, you know, this is your interpretation.
He can become inconsequential in just about 4 years' time.
Exactly.
But at this moment in time,
and Uhuru can just say, yeah.
But you see,
as you see, I told you guys, this guy is leading us in the wrong direction. Yeah. You see now, he's been going in the wrong direction. All of you have told him, come and talk to me. He is not coming to me with saying, I accept, I'm leading you in the wrong direction. I am reminding you people.
Yeah, I told you.
But guys, let's be honest here. Do you actually see Uhuru Kenyatta doing something like that?
Why not?
Uhuru?
Yes.
Why not?
Why not?
Because he will have completely isolated himself.
How many times did Uhuru warn people and say,
yes.
But he was warning them. Yeah. He was warning them. It's the same thing he did.
But NGUNJIRI, what does Uhuru have to lose?
No, he has a lot to lose. How? He has the respect of the community to lose.
Really?
Because 87% of this community chose the side Rigathi was on.
You know something? You've been a politician. You've been a politician for a long time.
Tumalize. It is a look. This one is for a look and see.
It's a looking thing.
It's a looking thing.
It's a looking thing.
Yeah. NGUNJIRI, always a pleasure having you in the studio.
It's been great. Asanteni sana.
NGUNJIRI Wambugu is a former member of parliament for Nyeri Town constituency and still a political player. You're looking to come back in one way or another.
Tunauza chai na mandazi.
For now.
Ni cartel.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.